Have you guys ever looked at something on paper, like numbers-wise, statistically, and just thought to yourself, man, that is not okay? Well, I know I sure have, and that is exactly what went through my mind when I hopped on my Stamina Necromancer on the PTS and started messing around with some of the changes. Hello, 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 ladies, gentlemen, and others. How are you guys doing today? It is your fella Kuro here to talk to you a little bit about Necromancers, Stamina Necromancers, if we are still using that antiquated labeling system at this point, and how the new hybridization changes have affected them directly, and oh boy, is it unpleasant when we start to think about the repercussions. So, anyone who has ever fought a Stamcro in PvP should already know that the class is basically a walking tank, and by tank I don't mean a soggy meat sponge that is meant to soak up damage and do not much else. I mean a genuine, beautiful American M1 Abrams tank with no purpose other than to seek and destroy any and all threats to this great nation. And by this great nation I do mean Tamriel, of course. Now, the Stamcro has always had incredible firepower, comboed with an almost unparalleled defense due to all of their just natural damage mitigation, high healing, and all that other good stuff. Well, that firepower hasn't really changed much, thankfully, but when it comes to their sturdiness, their bulk, and their girth, things just got a little out of hand. So we're going to go ahead, take a look at these changes right now, and like in my last videos, I am going to, of course, talk about the changes both between offense and defense separately, even though there really isn't much going on offensively, but I feel like it's still worth talking about. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the defensive changes because that's where the real problems lie. Alright guys, here we are on the Auradon Beach once again. I'm sure you guys might remember this location from a couple of my last videos, because this is a very good spot to just kind of show you guys some stats here and use my sets and just, show you guys some practical applications of things here. So I'm going to go ahead and just to give you guys a proof of stats here, give you guys an idea of what kind of build that I'm using. I'm going to buff up fully, show you the stats, and explain everything so you guys can compare this to your own setups and think about the differences and just kind of give you some perspective here. So we're going to get into combat. So as you can see, we have just under 7,000 weapon damage. We have 6873 fully buffed, and on this build that I'm using, it's actually pretty easy to keep that up pretty reliably. So most of the time on this setup, I'm going to have pretty good weapon damage, as you can see there. Just shot back up to 6873 when I wasn't even pressing buttons. So very, very solid. We get up to 30,000 armor here. The resistance is not super, or the recoveries aren't like super crazy or anything, but they're pretty decent as well. So as you can see, this is a pretty decent build. It's not insane, but it's got some good numbers all across the board. And remember that you can do that. Like, it's not hard to get to this spot right here. So this is a very basic general build. It's easy to break past all the numbers that I have here. This is just a simple but effective setup I threw together for testing. So now guys, I'm going to talk to you about the two skills that are really going to be affecting the Stamcro this patch. First and foremost is, of course, what I just respec there because I was too stupid to do it ahead of time, the Spirit Mender. Any Necro is already using this, but I know most Stamina Necromancers are using Spirit Guardian. Now, Spirit Guardian doesn't have the most potent heal, especially on live right now, because it does not scale with weapon damage on live. But here on the PTS, it does scale with weapon damage now, and as you can see, unbuffed, the Spirit Mender tooltip is a nice 5,287. It's not too bad. It's kind of like a cauterize, unbuffed cauterize. So it's respectable. The draw for this skill was always the 10% damage mitigation, which was basically full uptime on major protection, right? But the thing about that is we don't need to use this anymore on Stamcro. 1, it costs a lot. 2, barely heals for anything. 3, it gives you damage mitigation, but there's a lot of other ways to get damage mitigation. And while it's nice, I think the best choice is to be able to heal through damage you take much more consistently. And for that, guys, Stamcros can now use Intensive Mender to great effect. As you can see, look at that tooltip. I'm sitting at 10,500 healing from this thing every 2 seconds. That's basically a burst heal. Put it on the bar here. Now I'm at almost 11,000, fully unbuffed. So we're gonna buff up just so you guys can see how big this thing gets. Look at that, 14,000 healing. I'm pretty sure I messed something up. And it's supposed to go a little higher, because I'm almost positive that I ruined something. Either way, though. Either way, it's a lot of healing, okay? That's what's important here. It is a lot of fucking healing. It gives us a massive amount of healing every 2 seconds. Do you know what other skills tooltip around this 14k number here? Things like Honor the Dead, things like Coagulating Blood, tooltip for about this much. You know the difference between this skill and those skills? Do you have any idea what the difference is? Those skills cost around 4,000 magicka. With Summoner's Armor active, this thing only costs 1836. This costs like half or less than some of those other burst heals, and this is a heal over time. You cast this one time, you're gonna get basically 4 back-to-back Honor the Deads once every 2 seconds. So having this ability on with a decent amount of weapon damage is going to be basically like having your own pocket healer following around behind you and spamming Honor the Dead on you. It is an incredibly potent heal that is going to let Stamcros feel even tankier and be even harder to put down, because they're going to be able to shrug off so much of that damage and just heal through it passively. Yes, this lasts half as long as Spirit Guardian, but it also costs half as much and heals for twice as much. So it's very easy to maintain this because the cost is so little, and if you have decent recovery, which you will, naturally, because of Stamcro passives and just a lot of the other ways you can get recovery. I've only got 1100 here, but that is plenty. I've also got on 6 heavy on this setup right now, 6 heavy. So that's also going to help a lot with Constitution. It's very easy to maintain this. So you won't even need a burst heal. A lot of Stamcros like to use Rally as a burst heal. I don't know if you noticed, but I don't have that on. I don't have Rally. I'm using dual wield here, because of a few other changes I'll talk about soon. But the thing is, even if you don't have Rally, you do have the option for a good burst heal now. You know what that is, guys? That is Resistant Flesh. Resistant Flesh on live scales only with spell damage. Here on the PTS, the scales, of course, with weapon damage as well. And as you can see, completely unbuffed. We're getting a 14,000 tooltip. I'm gonna go buff up on some of these guys here just to let you see how big that can actually get. Boom, buffed up, 18,000. Something's weird here. Yeah, there we go, 19,000. My Magma Incarnate wasn't procced. So as you can see, this thing gets up very incredibly high for one single cast. And another thing about this skill is that if you read the bottom text there, the subtext, you grant the target spell and physical resistance equal to half of the amount healed. So if you heal for a big amount, I would show you that in action, but it doesn't count for overhealing, only healing actually done, so I can't show you. But if you were to, say, hit a fat 10k crit on this, you're gonna get 5,000 extra armor. That is basically major resolve. Like, this thing is going to give you 2, 3, 4k armor very consistently if you are using this. Now, it does cost quite a bit compared to Intensive Mender, but if you do have the sustain through something like, say, Wretched Vitality, maybe you're an Imperial, maybe you are using Orzorgas, which I am using. No, I am not using Orzorgas, actually. I lied to you. But, yeah, there's a whole lot of ways to pump up your Magicka sustain to be able to spam abilities like this. Obviously, you would make small sacrifices in their usefulness if you have to sacrifice things like weapon damage, but even with a lot less weapon damage, you could easily get this thing to tooltip around 15-16k fully buffed, which is going to be plenty to get you out of the danger zone, especially if you can use it 2, 3, 4 times in a row without having to worry about your sustain. So definitely a lot of options here with these two incredibly potent heals. It's basically going to make your Necromancer feel absolutely unkillable. Even if you do take a little more damage, you're going to heal through it like it's nothing, and not to mention, you can heal all of your friends with these two abilities. You can heal your friends' friends, your cousin's friends, your uncle's friends. Hell, you can heal your fucking science teacher from the 5th grade who didn't like you and always made you present in front of the class even though he knew you didn't want to do that, and made you leave the class with deep emotional trauma all the way down in your soul after every single day. But you can heal him if you want to. He deserves it, I guess. So yeah, defensively, that is Stamcro right now. And I know it's very, very hybridy, but that's kind of what every class is going towards now. But that's all. That's all for the defensive choices. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Stamcro offense. Now, not much has changed because not a lot of the skills in the Stamcro kit are really all that stellar. The only one I could really think about would be potentially using Stalking Blast Bones instead of Blighted Blast Bones. It deals more damage depending on how far it travels, so it could hit a lot harder than Blighted Blast Bones in some situations, but I think with the incredibly high healing we're going to have with this upcoming patch, most people, even the Magic and Necromancers, might end up using Blighted Blast Bones instead. But either way, they're both good choices depending on what build you're using. If you were doing something weird, say like a ranged Stamcro, you could definitely use Stalking, and you would you benefit from that ranged increased damage pretty well. But either way, both of them are going to be very, very good morphs, and both are going to be great options. However, I am sticking with Blighted Blast Bones because I am now taking advantage of the Rapid Rot passive that Necromancers get, which gives them 15% extra damage over time. Now, one of the things that I think really helps make this more useful on the Stamina Necromancer is Degeneration. They changed this, of course, like everything else, to scale with weapon damage, and as you can see, sitting here unbuffed, this thing has a 17.8k tooltip. So I'm using this for two reasons. Reason one, this gives me a massive single target dot, and two, this now also gives you Major Brutality on top of Major Sorcery. So this is going to be my way, or at least on this setup, of getting my Brutality buff and also applying a big fat nasty stinky dot to people. If I go ahead and buff up all the way, let's take a look at it real quick. On my dual wield bar, where I have less weapon damage, mind you, I have 23,000 damage over 12 seconds. That is an incredibly potent dot. And you can use that, stack that with other dots, like I'm using Blood Craze here. Again, that's a pretty fat dot. You can stack it with all kinds of other dots. Hell, if you wanted to make an absolutely cheesy boy, you could do something like Soul Trap. It's not even as, well, it might be about as potent as the other one. I don't know, let's buff up real quick. I'm really unsure, because I've never used it before, but you totally could. Look at that, 20,000 dot on Soul Trap too. That's crazy, guys. Soul Trap was already hybridized, but now there are a few more options. And this is also going to be able to help you mix up your weapon choices quite a bit as well, because back in the past, dual wield and sword and board on the Necromancer just wasn't super viable unless you wanted to use something like a set that gives you weapon damage or potions that give you weapon damage. You don't need to do that anymore. You can use whatever weapons you really want to these days, and just use a new skill like Degeneration. Or if you want to do, like I said before, the ranged Stamina Necromancer, you could even go down here to the bow, go to Poison Arrow, and then you got Venom Arrow, which gives you Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, with, again, a pretty solid dot. I have actually considered making a sword and board bow build on my Stamcro. I know that sounds weird, but it would work. So there's all kinds of choices, all kinds of things that you guys can mess around with and try out now offensively on the Stamcro that are going to be very strong, because Stamcro, while it has always, of course, been the tanky class, its offense is impressive. So if you stack dots with the Major Defile on this thing, and you combine that with a strong spammable like Power Slam here, as you can see, 12,000 unbuffed tooltip. Not even gonna bother buffing up because I have multiple videos where I do that and show you this thing hits like a fucking truck. You can just absolutely overpower people, and they can't really do much about it because your healing and your tankiness are just going to be too strong for them to deal with. And honestly, I don't think it's good. I don't think that's good for the game, guys. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I think a lot of these classes that are getting, good benefits from the hybridization are going to become a real problem in this patch. I think healing in general is going to be a real problem in this upcoming patch, unless ZeniMax does something to adjust it and do something to the cross healing. But who am I to really say? Who am I to judge? I think ZeniMax is going to do what they want to do, and some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it. It is always like that. You guys tell me what you guys think about it down in the comments. That is going to be it for this video. I want to go ahead and go now. I love you guys. Have a great day. Kuro out. Mwah. I could follow you.